hospital lights flickered overhead as I finished yet another long shift. I was exhausted, my body ached, my eyelids were heavy, but the night was still young, and I had to push through. It wasn't the first time I'd worked a double shift, but tonight felt different. I just wanted to be home. My apartment was a small, quiet place, and I was longing for the comfort of my bed. The clock hit 2:30 a.m. when I finally clocked out. The silence of the hospital parking lot greeted me like an old friend as I stepped into my car. I pulled out of the lot, leaving the bright lights of the hospital behind, and made my way toward the back roads that led to my apartment. The roads were mostly empty this time of night, which was a blessing. I didn't want to deal with traffic, not when I was so tired. The dark stretch of road felt endless. The headlights from my car illuminated the empty path ahead, and the trees on either side seemed to stretch into infinity. It was peaceful, or at least it should have been. That's when I noticed it. A car was behind me. At first I thought it was just another vehicle on the road, but something felt off. The headlights were too bright, too close. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The car was tailgating me, way too close, flashing its headlights aggressively. I gripped the wheel tighter, my heart rate picking up. Maybe it was just some jerk in a hurry, but I didn't like it. I sped up a little, hoping they'd pass, but the car stayed right on my tail, its headlights glaring through the mirror. My palms began to sweat. I glanced at the road ahead. No other cars, just endless stretches of trees and asphalt. I tried to shake it off, but the car didn't back off. It kept getting closer. Every time I glanced in the mirror, it was right there. Panic set in. I turned onto a small side road, hoping to lose them, but the car followed. It was getting too close now, too relentless. My heart hammered against my chest as I slammed my foot on the gas, trying to pull ahead, but the other car wasn't letting up. Then, suddenly, the car swerved, forcing me off the road. I didn't even have time to brace myself. My car slammed into the ditch with a violent thud, sending a jolt of pain through my entire body. For a moment, everything went silent. My breathing was ragged, my vision blurry. Then I saw him, the driver of the other car. He was stepping out, walking toward me. My hands were shaking as I fumbled for my phone, but before I could even unlock it, he was at my window. "Get out of the car," he ordered, his voice cold and steady. He was tall, dressed in dark clothes, his eyes filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "No," I whispered, my heart pounding. "Please, just let me go." He didn't listen. Instead, he reached for the door handle, yanking it open. His hand was rough as he grabbed my wrist, pulling me out of the car and onto the cold, wet ground. "Get up," he hissed. "You're coming with me." I couldn't understand what was happening. Why was he doing this? My breath came in short, frantic bursts, my mind racing to make sense of it all. "Who are you?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He stared at me, his eyes hardening. "You don't remember me, do you?" "No, you wouldn't. But I remember you, Emma. I remember what you did." My stomach churned. My name. He knew my name. That's when I remembered. A mistake I'd made a few years ago. A patient that nearly died because of an error I'd made. It was a slip of the hand, a moment of distraction, but it almost cost someone their life. The guilt had haunted me ever since, but I never imagined it would come back to this. "You're crazy," I muttered, my heart hammering. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to." The man's expression darkened. "That's not good enough. You're going to pay for it. I'm going to make sure you pay for it." I stumbled backward, my mind whirling with terror. He was still coming toward me, his face twisted with anger. I had to think fast. My hands shook as I fumbled through my purse, my eyes darting around for anything I could use. My fingers brushed something cold and hard. The emergency kit I'd forgotten was in the glove compartment. It was a small pepper spray bottle, but it was something. In a panic, I yanked it out and sprayed it directly into his face. He staggered back, his face contorted in pain. I thought I had a chance to run, but he quickly recovered. Rage burned in his eyes as he pulled something from his pocket. Something shiny. A knife. "Stupid woman," he growled, advancing on me. "You can't escape." My body trembled, my mind racing for any way out. There was nowhere to go. He was blocking my every move, and the knife gleamed in his hand like a death sentence. Then, by some miracle, I remembered something. Something I'd learned during my training at the hospital. My hands were shaking as I reached for a piece of broken glass, a shard from the broken windshield. I threw it at him with everything I had. The glass struck him in the chest, making him stumble back, momentarily disoriented. I didn't wait. I bolted, running as fast as my legs could carry me. I heard his furious shout behind me, but I kept running. My breath came in ragged gasps as I looked around, desperate for someone, anyone, to help. And then, a car appeared. A pair of headlights cut through the darkness. It slowed as it neared me, and I ran toward it, waving my arms, screaming for help. The driver, a man in his 50s, hesitated, but then stopped. I threw open the passenger door, practically throwing myself into the car. "Call the police," I gasped. He's trying to kill me." The man didn't ask questions. He pulled away, speeding toward the nearest town. Behind us, the stranger's footsteps faded, but I knew it wasn't over. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd narrowly escaped death. The police arrived not long after. They found the man in the woods, hiding like a coward. When they questioned him, it all came out. His plan, his obsession with my mistake, everything. It wasn't just a random attack. He'd been tracking me for years, waiting for the right moment to make me pay. I never thought that one small mistake, an error I couldn't undo, would lead to a nightmare like this. But I survived. Somehow. And now, every time I drive, every time the night feels too quiet, I wonder if he's still out there, waiting. I'd like to tell you a story, but don't get too comfortable. This isn't one of those feel-good tales. It starts like any other night. A regular night, actually. A small suburban gas station. Nothing special. I was standing at the counter, trying to scrounge together enough change to pay for a pack of smokes. Money was tight, like it always was lately. Bills stacked up, overdue notices crammed into the mailbox. I wasn't dreaming about winning the lottery. I wasn't that stupid. But I thought, why not? Just a quick scratch-off. Couldn't hurt, right? I handed the cashier a crumpled bill and asked for one of the cheapest tickets. He didn't look up at first, just scanned the barcode, slapping the ticket on the counter. I grabbed it, scratched the coating off, barely giving it a second thought. My heart wasn't even in it. Then, it happened. The cashier froze. His hand was still on the register, his face going pale. He stared at the ticket in my hand. Slowly, like he didn't want to believe it, he raised his eyes to meet mine. "This ticket," he whispered, voice shaking. "It's worth $10 million. I blinked. I didn't even know how to react. The words didn't make sense. $10 million? What? I stammered, trying to process the sudden rush of adrenaline. This was some kind of mistake. There was no way. But he wasn't joking. His eyes were wide, full of fear, and his voice dropped to a low whisper. You need to leave. Now. Before I could ask him what the hell was going on, the store phone rang. The cashier's hand jerked toward it, and he picked it up slowly. I could hear the mumble of a voice on the other end. His face went even paler. He listened, silent, his eyes locked on me the whole time. He hung up, and then he said it again, low and steady. "Someone knows you have this ticket." I didn't wait for another word. My heart was pounding in my chest. I grabbed the ticket and stuffed it into my pocket, racing out of the store, the door slamming behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. The cashier was still standing there, frozen, staring. That's when I saw it. A black SUV. It rolled into the parking lot, slow and deliberate. I swear to God, I could feel the weight of their eyes on me, even from across the lot. I wasn't stupid. I knew something was wrong. I ran to my car, started the engine before the door was even fully shut. My hands shook as I shifted into drive, pulling out of the gas station fast, glancing in the rearview mirror. The SUV was following. I didn't dare look back again. The streets were empty, but every inch of me felt hunted, like I was being cornered. The SUV didn't break its pace. It stayed close, like they knew exactly where I was going. I turned onto side streets, hoping I could lose them, but they followed every move, every turn. No matter how fast I drove, they stayed on me. Eventually, I ditched the car at a motel. It wasn't much, cheap, run down, and out of the way, but it was the best I could do. I took a second to breathe, hands gripping the wheel, heart still racing. I told myself I was overreacting. It was just a ticket, right? I was wrong. I woke up to the sound of my door being forced open. My eyes snapped open, just in time to see the shadow of a man stepping into the room. I moved, instinct screaming in my blood. They'd found me. I barely had time to think. I grabbed my stuff, ran out of the room, and bolted down the stairs, heart hammering against my ribs. They were still chasing me, but this time I had a plan. I was going to lose them in the streets. I didn't get far. When I got to the car, I noticed something. My wallet. It was missing. I cursed under my breath, already knowing the answer. They'd tracked me. I'd been too careless. They'd watched my credit card purchases, followed every move, and now they were in control. I was a dead man. That's when she showed up. A woman in her 30s, sharp suit, neat, but something about her didn't sit right. She smiled like she knew more about me than I did. She introduced herself as Susan, from the Lottery Commission. She said I could trust her, but the more she talked, the more wrong it felt. She knew too much about me, where I worked, where I shopped, things I hadn't told anyone. I didn't trust her for a second. I was just about to bolt when she said it. The lottery is rigged. I froze. What do you mean? The ticket. It's not a win. It's a setup. They want you, Tom. They want you to do something for them. They want to control you. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about money. It never was. The people after me worked for a secret syndicate, using fake lottery wins to lure desperate people like me into a dangerous game. They used us to launder money, push illegal operations, and when we got too deep, they made us disappear. I wasn't lucky. I was a pawn. They weren't done with me. Not by a long shot. I thought maybe burning the ticket would be the answer. I went back to my motel room, my mind spinning, and I set the damn thing on fire. I watched the flames curl around it, black smoke rising. But they didn't believe me. I heard them knock at the door. They didn't give me a choice. They told me plain as day. I had two options. I could never go back to my life, leave everything behind, and disappear into the shadows. Or they'd make me vanish. Just like that. No more Tom. No more anything. I chose to leave. It wasn't a choice I wanted, but I didn't have a damn thing left. So, here I am. A new name, a new face, a new life. I still watch my back though, every day, every night. And when the sun sets, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere out there, someone's still watching me, waiting. The ticket? Gone, burned to ash. But it's still out there in some way, following me, haunting me. And every time I see a black SUV in my rearview mirror, I remember, you never escape. You ever have one of those nights where a single mistake shatters everything? I did, and I'm here to tell you about it. It started like any other Thursday. Rain hammered down so hard the parking lot at the mall looked like a giant puddle, just dark pools reflecting headlights. I'd been running errands, groceries, meds for my mom, and I was tired, bone deep, tired. I didn't see the car when I clicked my fob. I just heard the beep and saw the silver lights flash through the rain. I slid inside, slammed the door, and let out a long breath. The sound of rain on the roof drowned everything else. For a moment, I just sat there, enjoying the quiet. But something felt off. The seat was cold in a way it shouldn't have been. The smell was wrong, sharp, musky, like leather and metal, not the stale coffee and lilac cream I was used to. My coat squeaked against the steering wheel as I turned the key, and the engine hummed to life. I shook it off. Just tired, Ellen. That's all. I pulled out of the lot and onto the road. I didn't notice the bag right away. The rain turned everything outside into blurs. Taillights smeared red, the street lamps bleeding orange onto the asphalt. I reached for my glasses, wiped them on my sleeve, and glanced in the rearview mirror. That's when I saw it. A black duffel bag, slumped in the back seat like someone had just tossed it there. My breath caught in my chest. What is that? I whispered. My own voice sounded thin, shaky. I yanked the car onto the shoulder so hard the tires skidded. Gravel sprayed up as I slammed into park. My pulse thudded in my ears. I twisted around, staring at the bag like it might move. Don't touch it. I touched it. It was heavy, wrongly heavy. The zipper was cold and stiff under my fingers. I hesitated, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. But I pulled it open. My hands froze. Stacks of cash stared back at me, neat and tidy. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all strapped in bundles. The air in the car felt thick, pressing down on me. My breath came shallow. My fingers moved on their own, brushing aside the cash. I hit metal, a gun. I jerked back like it had bitten me, the bag slipping from my hands and hitting the floor with a heavy thud. My mind scrambled to make sense of what I was seeing. This isn't my car. Whose car is this? Then the phone rang. I jumped so hard I hit my head on the roof. The screen lit up. Unknown caller. Everything in me screamed don't answer. But my thumb swiped the screen before I could stop it. Hello? For a second, all I heard was static. Then a voice came through. Distorted. Mechanical. Like someone whispering through a broken speaker. Keep driving, Ellen. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the windshield, at the blurred outlines of the trees through the rain. Who is this? What do you want? We're watching you. Calm. Detached. Don't stop again, and don't call anyone, unless you want us to pay your mother a visit. My body locked up. My throat went dry. You're lying, I croaked. Am I? The voice chuckled, low, humorless. Then it recited her address. My mom's address. My knees went weak, even though I was sitting down. The call cut off. My breathing turned ragged, loud in the quiet car. I gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Then I looked in the rearview mirror. Headlights. A black SUV pulled onto the shoulder behind me, its lights bright, blinding, turning my mirrors white. I didn't think. I threw the car into drive, tires squealing on the wet road. The SUV followed. Its headlights were so close they swallowed me. I couldn't tell if they were pushing me forward or just waiting for me to screw up. The phone buzzed again. A text this time. 30 minutes. Address pinned. Don't stop. Don't call the police. I tapped the link, hands trembling. It was a pin outside town. Industrial lots. Nothing but warehouses and mud. My stomach twisted. My mind screamed, call the cops, stop, run. But my mother, her face floated in my mind, her thin body curled up in her recliner, waiting for me to come home. They knew where she was. I couldn't risk it. The SUV loomed behind me, never letting up. The rain fell harder, drumming against the windshield like it was trying to drown me. My fingers were slick on the wheel, the air sharp and thick in my lungs. And that's when I made a choice, a reckless, desperate choice. There's a back road, one only locals know about, a narrow, winding dirt trail through the fields. If I could lose them there. I gritted my teeth and waited, hands shaking. My pulse hammered in my ears. Then I yanked the wheel hard. The tires screamed as the car skidded onto the muddy path. The SUV's headlights swerved, but they didn't follow immediately. Mud sprayed up, splattering across the windows as branches whipped at the sides of the car, scraping like nails on a coffin. "Come on, come on," I muttered, my voice shaking. The car bucked and slid through the muck, but I kept pushing, my foot pressing the gas down harder than it ever had before. Minutes passed, maybe longer. The SUV's headlights disappeared. The road was dark now, just the storm and me. I pulled into an abandoned lot and killed the engine. Silence. I sat there, my breath jagged, hands still locked on the wheel. I stared at the duffel bag in the back seat, cold, silent, accusing. At sunrise, I left the car outside the police station. I didn't look back as I walked away, soaked to the bone, the weight of the night sitting heavy on my shoulders. I got home, unlocked the door with trembling fingers, and found my mother still asleep in her chair. She had no idea how close she'd come. And me? I wish I could tell you I moved on, that I stopped looking over my shoulder. But every time I see a black SUV, I feel that voice in my bones. Keep driving, Ellen. Because mistakes like that, they don't just go away.